Welcome to our deep dive into a pivotal week in history, October 2nd to 8th, 1939. This week, just over a month into World War II, witnessed the final throes of Polish resistance against the German forces, a flurry of diplomatic maneuvers, and the beginnings of the oppressive realities of Nazi occupation. We'll follow the events chronologically day by day to understand how this week set the stage for the long conflict ahead.
We will begin our examination on Monday, October 2nd, 1939, with the events in Poland.
The defense of the Hel Peninsula, a strategically important Polish position on the Baltic coast, finally collapses under relentless German pressure.
This marks the near-complete German occupation of Poland, leaving only isolated pockets of resistance. However, on the same day, the Battle of Kock begins. This will be the last major stand of Polish forces in the invasion.
The Polish forces at Kock were led by General Franciszek Kleeberg, who exhibited remarkable determination to fight on against seemingly impossible odds.
Turning our attention now to events unfolding far from the battlefields of Europe. On this same day in Panama, the American nations determined to stay neutral in the European war, establish a 300-mile security zone off their coasts.
This becomes known as the Declaration of Panama, a complex strategic decision aimed at preserving neutrality and regional security in the face of a rapidly expanding global conflict.
Let's move on to Tuesday, October 3rd, 1939. On the Western Front, a significant development occurs as British troops begin taking over sections of the French defensive line.
This is a sign of the growing commitment of the British Expeditionary Force to the defense of France, and a clear signal to Germany that Britain is prepared to stand with its allies.
While the armies gather and prepare in the West, the war at sea continues. In the Atlantic Ocean, a German U-boat sinks a Greek cargo ship, but then performs a surprising act of mercy by taking on the survivors.
This act of humanity by the U-boat commander Werner Lott, amidst the brutality of war, raises questions about the moral dilemmas faced by individuals, even as they carry out their orders.
Further east in Lithuania, we see the growing Soviet pressure mirroring the fate of Estonia and Latvia, which had already been forced to make concessions to Moscow.
Joseph Stalin and Vyacheslav Molotov, the Soviet leaders, are pushing for a mutual assistance pact with Lithuania. This pact, however, seemingly benign in its wording, would effectively compromise Lithuania's sovereignty and lead to the stationing of Soviet troops on Lithuanian soil.
Now let's delve into the events of Wednesday, October 4th, 1939. Back in Poland, the heroic, but ultimately doomed, last stand at Kock continues.
As the fighting continues, Hitler issues a chilling decree, a general amnesty for war crimes committed by German troops in Poland. This decree effectively pardons any acts of brutality or violations of international law perpetrated by German soldiers, further reinforcing a culture of impunity within the occupying forces and setting a dark precedent for the future.
This decree highlights the grim reality of the situation in Poland and foreshadows the brutal nature of the Nazi occupation. Adding to this grim picture, the massacre of Polish civilians in the town of Piotrków reveals a darker side to the Nazi invasion.
This atrocity, the cold-blooded murder of innocent civilians, was part of the Intelligence Action Campaign, a broader strategy to suppress potential resistance. By targeting Poland's cultural and political elite, this campaign represents a significant escalation in the brutality of the Nazi occupation, marking a shift towards a more systematic and organized form of terror.
On the same day, we shift our focus to France, where French forces retreat from the Saarland region back to the Maginot Line.
This marks the conclusion of the Saar Offensive, a limited French incursion into German territory intended to assist Poland. This operation failed to achieve its objectives and ultimately resulted in a French withdrawal back to their fortified defensive positions.
Thursday, October 5th, 1939 brings about a pivotal moment in Poland. As the Battle of Kock ends in Polish surrender, this marks the complete military defeat of the country and the end of organized Polish military resistance.
With the fall of Kock, all of Poland is now under the control of either German or Soviet forces. Adding to the symbolic weight of this defeat, Hitler stages a victory parade in Warsaw, a stark image of Nazi triumph, and a clear demonstration of their dominance over Poland.
Further north in Latvia, we see a similar pattern of coercion as the nation succumbs to Soviet pressure, signing a treaty that allows for Soviet military bases on its soil.
This agreement, signed under duress, severely compromises Latvian sovereignty and marks another step in Soviet expansion in the Baltic region, demonstrating Stalin's determination to secure his western border and expand his sphere of influence.
Moving on to Friday, October 6, 1939. In Germany, Hitler addresses the Reichstag, boasting of his victory in Poland, and offering what appears to be a peace proposal to Britain and France.
However, this proposal is seen as insincere by the Allies, who doubt Hitler's intentions given his recent actions. The proposal is rejected outright, setting the stage for a prolonged conflict.
Within occupied Poland, German occupation policies begin in earnest, laying the groundwork for a brutal regime.
These measures represent a calculated and systematic approach to subjugating the Polish population and exploiting the resources of the country. They set a chilling precedent for the years of hardship and suffering that lie ahead for the Polish people.
Across the Atlantic in the United States, public opinion remains staunchly against involvement in the European war.
This sentiment reflects a deep-seated isolationist tradition in American foreign policy, but this stance will be tested as the war continues, and the threat to American interests grows.
Meanwhile, in a different theater of war, a major turning point occurs in China. The Chinese army wins a decisive victory against the Japanese at the First Battle of Changsha.
This victory, the first major Chinese victory of the Second Sino-Japanese War, boosts morale for the Chinese and demonstrates their ability to mount effective defenses.
As we transition to Saturday, October 7th, 1939, we see a significant escalation in the Nazi regime's racial policies, with the creation of the Reich Commissioner for the Consolidation of German Nationhood.
This office, headed by Heinrich Himmler, is tasked with executing the Nazi regime's racial policies, including the forced expulsion of Poles and Jews from occupied territories, and the resettlement of ethnic Germans in these areas.
The forced expulsions of Poles from Western Poland begin, as per Hitler's directive to Heinrich Himmler. These areas, designated for German settlers, become the first targets in the broader plan to Germanize the annexed territories.
These expulsions lay the foundation for widespread displacement and systemic oppression under German occupation, and represent a dramatic escalation of the Nazi policy of racial cleansing.
We also see activity in the United Kingdom and the North Atlantic, as a secret mission, Operation Fish, is launched. This operation involves the shipment of gold from Britain to Canada.
This extraordinary measure is taken to ensure the United Kingdom can sustain its war effort by purchasing military material in North America, highlighting the importance of economic strength in a modern war.
Back in Europe, France officially rejects Hitler's peace proposal, solidifying the Allied front and dashing any hopes for a negotiated settlement to the crisis.
In Spain, the Air Force is reorganized, reflecting the growing influence of its pro-fascist regime and its alignment with the Axis powers.
On the Western Front, the British Expeditionary Force completes its deployment in France, signaling the Allied resolve to hold the line against a potential German offensive, and demonstrating the growing commitment of Britain to the defense of France. Bringing us to the final day of this pivotal week, Sunday, October 8th, 1939. Hitler formally annexes large swaths of Western Poland into the German Reich.
This action formally incorporates these regions into Nazi Germany, further solidifying their control over Polish territory.
These annexations are accompanied by oppressive policies, designed to expel Poles and Jews, and resettle ethnic Germans in their place, under the Lebensraum program, a core element of Nazi ideology.
In Poland, a grim milestone is reached, as the Nazis establish the first Jewish ghetto in occupied Poland, located in Piotrków Trybunalski.
This act marks a significant escalation in the persecution of Jewish people, forcing them into overcrowded and segregated districts, with restricted access to essential resources.
Conditions within the ghetto are dire, marked by overcrowding, malnutrition, and disease, foreshadowing the horrors that will unfold as the Nazi regime's policies towards the Jews become increasingly brutal.
Out in the Atlantic Ocean, aerial and naval skirmishes highlight the increasing tension at sea, with both sides suffering losses.
These skirmishes underscore the expanding scope of the conflict and hint at the crucial role that naval warfare will play in determining the outcome of the war.
Let's take a step back now and reflect upon the events of this week, from Monday, October 2nd to Sunday, October 8th, 1939. This week witnessed a rapid shift in the landscape of World War II.
From the fall of Poland to the growing tensions in the Atlantic and the ominous rise of Nazi policies in occupied territories, these events provide a stark and chilling glimpse into the nature of the conflict that will engulf the world.
The swift defeat of Poland demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of Germany's blitzkrieg tactics, which combined rapid armored advances with overwhelming air power.
The Allies were caught off guard by the speed and ferocity of the German attack and struggled to adapt to this new form of warfare. This left the Allies reeling and scrambling to adapt to this new form of warfare.
The complete occupation of Poland also allowed Germany to establish a firm base of operations in Eastern Europe.
This strategic advantage would enable Germany to launch further offensives against its remaining enemies, expanding the conflict and threatening the stability of the entire region.
The events of this week also highlighted the complex web of alliances and political maneuverings that characterized the early stages of the war.
The Soviet Union's opportunistic seizure of territories in eastern Poland, under the secret pact with Germany, demonstrated Stalin's willingness to exploit the chaos of war for his own gain.
This move raised serious concerns about the long-term implications of this uneasy alliance between two ideologically opposed dictatorships and foreshadowed the future conflicts that would emerge between the Soviet Union and the Western powers.
The Declaration of Panama, while presented as a neutral act by the Americas, also revealed the growing anxiety about the conflict spreading to the Western Hemisphere.
The establishment of a security zone off the American coastlines, while intended to maintain neutrality, could also be interpreted as a defensive measure to safeguard American interests in the region.
The sinking of the Greek cargo ship by a German U-boat and the subsequent act of mercy by the U-boat commander underscores the unpredictable nature of naval warfare and the complex moral dilemmas faced by individuals on both sides of the conflict.
These events show that even in the midst of war, individual acts of compassion and humanity can still occur, challenging the simplistic narratives of good versus evil that often dominate wartime propaganda.
Perhaps the most chilling aspect of this week was the beginning of the Nazi regime's systematic oppression in occupied Poland. Hitler's decree granting amnesty for war crimes committed by German troops sent a clear message that the rule of law would be suspended in occupied territories.
This decree, in essence, condoned violence against Polish civilians and fostered a climate of impunity for German soldiers, setting a dangerous precedent for future atrocities.
The massacre at Piotrków and the establishment of the first Jewish ghetto in Piotrków Trybunalski were early signs of the horrific atrocities that would become hallmarks of the Nazi regime.
These events marked a significant escalation in the persecution of Jews and Poles under Nazi rule, foreshadowing the genocide that would engulf Europe in the years to come.
The mass expulsions of Poles from Western Poland to make way for German settlers demonstrated the ruthlessness with which the Nazis intended to implement their ideology of racial purity and territorial expansion.
These expulsions represent a deliberate policy of ethnic cleansing and population displacement, driven by the Nazi belief in the superiority of the German race and their right to expand eastward.
In contrast to the grim events unfolding in Europe, the Chinese victory at the First Battle of Changsha offered a glimmer of hope. It showed that even against a formidable enemy, determined resistance could prevail.
This victory, coming after a series of setbacks for the Chinese, had a significant impact on morale, not only for the Chinese, but for all those fighting against Axis aggression, demonstrating that the Axis powers were not invincible and that resistance was possible.
This week, October 2nd to 8th, 1939, stands as a microcosm of the larger conflict to come.
It showcased the military, political, and ideological forces that would shape the course of World War II and the tragic human costs that would be paid.
The events of this week serve as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked aggression and the importance of international cooperation in the face of tyranny.
Now let's delve into some of the individual stories that emerged during this pivotal week, as they offer a more personal perspective on the human impact of the war.
In Poland, the story of General Franciszek Kleeberg and his valiant stand at the Battle of Kock epitomizes the courage and determination of the Polish people, facing insurmountable odds.
Kleeberg's decision to fight on even after the Polish government had surrendered was a testament to his unwavering commitment to his country and his soldiers.
Despite knowing that defeat was inevitable, Kleeberg's actions inspired his troops and delayed the German advance.
This stand, though ultimately futile in a military sense, served as a powerful symbol of Polish resistance and defiance against Nazi aggression.
Shifting our focus to a different theater of war, on the other side of the Atlantic, the story of Werner Lott, the U-boat commander who rescued the survivors of the Greek cargo ship he sank, highlights the complex moral choices faced by individuals during wartime.
Lott's actions, which defied the expectations of wartime brutality, were a stark contrast to the actions of many of his fellow German soldiers.
His decision to risk his own safety, to save the lives of enemy sailors, is a reminder that even in the midst of war, humanity and compassion can still prevail.
Lott's story raises questions about the nature of obedience and the extent to which individuals are responsible for their actions when following orders, particularly in the context of a regime as ruthless and inhumane as Nazi Germany.
These individual stories, along with countless others from this era, provide a glimpse into the human drama that unfolded during this pivotal week.
They remind us that history is not just a series of dates and events, but a tapestry of individual experiences, choices, and sacrifices, often shaped by forces beyond their control.
As we delve further into this week in history, we'll explore the broader themes and consequences of these events, examining their impact on the course of the war and the world that emerged in its aftermath.
As we conclude our deep dive into the week of October 2nd to 8th, 1939, it is essential to reflect on the broader implications of this period and its lasting impact on the course of history.
The fall of Poland marked not only the beginning of World War II in Europe, but also the start of a new era of global conflict.
This new era would be characterized by unprecedented levels of violence and the systematic targeting of civilian populations, a grim foreshadowing of the horrors to come.
The events of this week underscore the dangers of appeasement and the importance of standing firm against aggression on the international stage.
The failure of the Western powers to deter Hitler's ambitions in the years leading up to the war had emboldened him and paved the way for his expansionist policies.
This failure would have profound consequences, leading to the outbreak of war and the immense suffering that followed.
With the lessons learned from this period, the devastating consequences of unchecked aggression would shape the post-war world order.
The creation of international institutions, designed to prevent future conflicts, emerged from the ashes of World War II.
Institutions such as the United Nations and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, were products of the collective desire to avoid repeating the mistakes that led to the devastation of World War II.
These institutions, though imperfect, represent a significant step towards a more cooperative and peaceful international system, a testament to the enduring human hope for a better future.
The week of October 2nd to 8th, 1939 serves as a pivotal turning point in human history.
It marked the end of an era of relative peace and stability, and the beginning of a period of unprecedented global conflict and upheaval.
It was a week filled with both tragedy and resilience, a testament to the capacity for both great evil and remarkable courage that resides within humanity.
As we remember the events of this week, we must strive to learn from the past and to work towards a future where peace and justice prevail.
By understanding the forces that led to this global conflict and the choices made by individuals and nations alike, we can hope to avoid repeating the mistakes that plunged the world into darkness.
The echoes of this pivotal week in 1939 continue to resonate today, reminding us of the fragility of peace and the importance of vigilance in safeguarding the hard-won lessons of history. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into a week that shaped the world.